This video features Jasmin Crockett questioning a prosecutor about the January 6th Capitol attack and the investigations into former President Donald Trump. Before I play the video, guys, if you're not subscribed to my channel, consider subscribing, like this video, share this video, take a listen.
Today, it seems like the Republicans have not really fought very much about whether or not Trump was guilty or not. In fact, their fight seems to be over whether or not you were authorized to prove their guilt. Do you recall a number of Republican members asking about whether or not your appointment was okay, even though we know that you've testified about the more than 100-year precedent that allowed for your appointment?
I was asked questions about that today, and our position, as we filed in our appeal, is that there was strong support for my appointment, including Supreme Court precedent directly on point.
Thank you so much. Additionally, everybody's been all gingerly here today, but I don't know why we're acting surprised that a man who had close to 90 allegations out of 4 different jurisdictions and ultimately ended up with 34 convictions after a jury was able to hear all the evidence would possibly be committing a criminal act on January 6th. In fact, considering the fact that we are now under the impression that he is violating people's due process rights, he is ignoring court orders, he's starting wars without congressional authority in contradiction to the Constitution. He's enriching himself to the tune of over $1.4 billion. He's shaking down electeds to draw maps that will help him stay in power because the Republicans don't understand that they swore an oath to the Constitution and that we are supposed to do checks and balances. He's also shaking down TV stations to get money. So why are we trying to pretend as if it is out of the realm for this particular man to commit the crime that he committed on January 6th? And frankly, the only reason he ran for president was to make sure that he would not be prosecuted, because I fully believe that you would have put him under the jail based on our long-form conversation that we had. But according to your special counsel report on page 137, it states the department's view that the Constitution prohibits the continued indictment and prosecution of a president is categorical and does not turn on the gravity of the crimes charged, the strength of the government's proof, or the merits of the prosecution, and that, quote, but for Mr. Trump's election and imminent return to the presidency, the office assessed that the admissible evidence was sufficient to obtain and sustain a conviction at trial. In other words, Donald Trump ran for president, like I said, so he wouldn't have to spend the rest of his life in prison. The chairman and other members of this committee have spent all day attacking you and trying to rewrite the history of January 6th. But Mr. Jim Jordan, the chairman, failed to mention how he was running around the Capitol terrified by the possibility that all those insurrectionists would harm him. In fact, on page 97 of the deposition transcript, you mentioned how Mark Meadows, the president's chief of staff, quote unquote, never saw Jim Jordan so scared. The chairman also failed to mention that he was in direct contact with the White House in the days leading up to and on January 6th, which is why his toll records were subpoenaed by your office. Let me be clear, because they're trying to act like this is Democrats on Republicans, and I guess you are a covert Democrat that knew that he was going to try to steal an election before he tried to steal that election, and so therefore you were somehow put into place. I mean, the conspiracy theories make your head spin, but nevertheless, were you going to subpoena the toll records of every single Republican simply because they were a Republican?
No, we subpoenaed the toll records in the course of this investigation because they were relevant to our investigation.
Relevant. Oh, okay. All right. So that means something about facts. So let's talk about facts. Donald Trump lost to Joe Biden, yes or no?
That's correct.
Okay. In fact, 60 federal and state courts have found that there was no evidence of election fraud. Trump's own attorney general and vice president knew that he lost the election, but he still tried to steal the election by pressuring state officials, designing fake elector plans, nearly having Mike Pence hanged, and ultimately demanding that his supporters, quote, fight like hell, correct?
Correct.
We all saw what happened once they reached the U.S. Capitol. As your report outlines, President Trump knew that he would incite violence at the Capitol that day. In fact, some of Trump's senior advisors were pushing for violence. For example, page 81 of the report details how co-conspirators number 2, John Eastman, tried to convince Mike Pence to break the law, stating that, quote, violence was necessary. So it isn't just Trump who is responsible for the death of multiple law enforcement officers and the injuries of thousands of people. A lot of Republican members of Congress are also responsible. 147 Republicans voted to overturn the 2020 election results, including multiple members currently serving on this committee.
Jasmin Crockett highlights that Republicans, despite their current stance, were reportedly terrified. They were terrified they were running for their life during the January 6th events. Crockett also points out that Trump's legal team raised concerns about the prosecutor's appointment despite a long-standing precedent for such appointments. Crockett discusses the numerous allegations and convictions against Trump, asserting that it is not surprising he would commit criminal acts. She suggests Trump ran for president to avoid prosecution. I mean, this is just blowing up on Trump's face since this special counsel started investigation January 6th events.
We've heard disregard for the First Amendment at times. We've heard talk about solely seeking charges against Donald Trump, obviously targeting. We've talked about the amount of time and reasonable time frame. But I want to ask you for a moment, I can, about some troubling reports that a prosecutor from your office, Jay Bratt, implied to Stanley Woodward that the administration would look more favorably on a judgeship application if he managed to get his client, Walt Nauta, to cooperate against President Trump and to flip on him. And we know this because Stanley Woodward himself came forth with this information. And I guess my question for you, is this appropriate behavior for a special counsel's office to leverage attorneys' future career prospects?
Sir, I believe I can answer this question, even though it's regarding the Florida case, because we did filings on it, and I'm not referring to anything in the final report. And my answer to you, sir, is that when I was first notified about this issue, which was 9 months after it allegedly occurred, this is alleged to have occurred before I was even special counsel, what I did is I directed my deputies to look into it. We made sure the person involved self-referred it to OPR. And then we did a filing to the court. There was a motion by President Trump's attorneys. We responded and we laid out our position. And our position was that I did not believe that that allegation was credible. At best, it was a misunderstanding because the people in the room did not understand any threat to be made. Even Mr. Woodard, in his allegation, claimed it was only an inference. 9 months went by where we interacted with Mr. Woodard, in which we had no hearing of a complaint. When the complaint was raised for the first time, which was on the eve of that indictment being brought, it was raised in the guise of asking the court to delay the indictment while an investigation of it happened. So I take allegations of misconduct very seriously. I would not want any of my attorneys threatening anybody. Ultimately, when I looked at this, I did not credit it, and we responded with our position in court. But we also, it was clear that it was referred to the Office of Professional Responsibility, which is what good prosecutors do in that situation.
Well, again, to say that you didn't consider it to be credible, I guess we have the United States Associate Attorney General, Stanley Woodward, who claims that this threat was made to him, and I don't see what he would stand to gain from not telling the truth there. And I understand that you tasked 2 of your attorneys with investigating those statements made by Bratt, but given the amount of publicity and the scrutiny that was surrounding this entire investigation, why in the world did you not initiate an independent investigation into these very alarming allegations?
Well, 2 points there. You stated that you don't. Why would he do this? When he made the allegation, when this allegation first came from President Trump's attorneys, and then days later from Mr. Woodard, he did ask for the indictment to be put off in result of this. So there was a thing he was asking for in result. And with respect to an independent investigation, that's exactly why you refer this to the Office of Professional Responsibility. They conduct an independent investigation outside of my office.
Well, let me just say, for 4 years, we watched the Biden administration politicize and weaponize the Department of Justice. From going after pro-life activists to spying on faithful Catholics, the Biden administration showed disregard for impartiality. And this blatant disregard was perhaps no clearer than in the targeting of President Trump. We've talked about it all throughout this day. They knew they couldn't beat him at the ballot box, so they pursued alternative options. And I'm grateful for this committee's efforts today to investigate this conduct to ensure accountability. And while elections are not akin to jury trials, I feel strongly that the results of the 2024 election send a clear message about how the American people feel about these politicized charges.
The prosecutor's report indicates that admissible evidence was sufficient to secure a conviction against Donald Trump, but for his election and a return to the presidency, nothing was done. Guys, the message is very, very clear from the prosecutor, and that is that Donald Trump is and can be convicted as a criminal, even though he is the president right now. But can you imagine what will happen once he is out of the office? These people, Jack Smith and his team, they will come after him.